The mental gymnastics that believers of this Bible will make in order to validate their story so that they can maintain their beliefs astounds me on a constant basis. This person just took it to levels to which I don't even think they've actually read their Bible, nor they even understand their own Bible in order to make the comments that they make, and they are just reaching and pulling shit out of their head in order to make it fit. So they say, of course, the fish god was important. This is why Jonah was swallowed by a fish in the first place. And his rationale for him being swallowed by a fish is the fact that the people of Nineveh that he was going to go and preach to worship Ishtar, which her symbol in the cuneiform means the house of fish. And they also worship Dogon, who was a half man, half fish. He said when the people worshiping the fish god have a fish vomit out a prophet on their shore, they listen. The problem with that is that there was no one in Nineveh who knew that he was spat out of the mouth of a fish. You see, the city of Nineveh is way in Iraq, next to the Euphrates River. The Euphrates River is hundreds of miles away from the coastline of the Levant, hundreds of miles from Joppa or the city of Tarshish, where he left from. So there is absolutely no way they would have known or been present to see him being vomited out of a fish. And your Bible states that he was spit out onto the shore and then made his way to Nineveh in order for him to give this prophecy of their destruction. So that whole part up there makes absolutely zero sense. Zero as in nothing, nada, nan, parts of nothing. Sense. So then he goes on to say, we also wouldn't expect there to be some kind of record of worshiping Yahweh, since Gentiles were not under the covenant laws, nor could they build the temple, because that was only for the Jews, and that until you get the cross, this God had no need for symbolism. Well, you are so wrong that it ain't even funny. The first part is that the people of ancient times, all people of ancient times, and even people today, build symbolisms towards the worship of their divinity. And the people of Nineveh built many different statues and amulets and pottery and written record concerning the God to which they worship through their entire history without skipping a beat. The only time you don't get Assyrians writing about their God is once they were conquered by the Babylonians, and then the city of Nineveh has the writings of Babylonian gods. And it's not, they don't even receive any of their gods being rebuilt in their city until Darius instructs them to build some after they're conquered by the Persians when he defeats the Babylonians. So therefore, the written religion of the city of Nineveh has always been written down by those people. So if they had converted to the worship of Yahweh, which was a Canaanite god and worshipped by multiple people like the Moabites, the Canaanites, the Shashu, then they would have written down that they worship Yahweh. And many of those people worshipped Yahweh and had symbolism. We find down in Egypt where there's a stele. I think it's the Tel Dan stele, might be the Tel Dan stele, that talks about the fact of the wandering nomadic Yahweh worshipers who are most likely the Shashu people. But we have the entire, a whole bunch of Ugaritic and Canaanite writings of El and his wife Asherah and their son Yahweh and the worship of Yahweh. And as far as them building symbols and temples, they all built temples. They all built symbols. And your Yahweh God required many symbols. This is what demonstrates to me that you have not read the Old Testament of your Bible. Because if you had read the Old Testament of your Bible, there were symbols, i.e. the 10 Commandments written on stone. There were symbols, i.e., the dress code of the priests with all the jewels and the linen that they're supposed to wear. And your God was very specific as to what the Levites were to wear in order to symbolize this God. The creating of the box for the Ark of the Covenant was very symbolic of this God. The way the tents were made, and right down to each little tassel, this God gave instructions for how it is to be built as a symbol for his dwelling place. There are tons of symbols. The type of calf that must be sacrificed, being unblemished and never been on a yoke and pull the plow. There are types of symbols. Just even in the, you can't just sacrifice any animal. It has to be a special kind of animal that has to be sacrificed in order for this to happen. The symbols of if you were a Hebrew slave and you won for life, then having an awl drawn, piercing through your left earlobe is a symbol of your dedication to this God and who you are. This God required so many symbols of worship towards him and in the buildings of the temples. And then, as a matter of fact, you say that you call the other people Gentiles instead of the Jews. Well, these people were Hebrew, and the other people were not considered to be Gentiles. Gentile is a more post-Jesus terminology that is used to represent anyone outside of the Semitic family. So during this time frame, the people of Nineveh were a Semitic people. They were, the Assyrians were a Semitic people, the Akkadians, a Semitic people, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Amorites, the Moabites, even Kemetic people are a Semitic people because Semitic is a common language. And the Canaanites were certainly Semitic in the fact that they were worshipers of Yahweh as well. But Yahweh was just a son of God and not the God, not the high God, not Elyon. But then the Hebrew people took Yahweh and made him Elyon and got rid of his wife Asherah, who originally was his mother. So your ideas of the Gentiles is a little bit off, but I will give you a little bit of credit that they weren't the specific Hebrew people, because as your book in Deuteronomy says, that Elyon gave the Israelites to Yahweh as his portion. And in most cases, that also meant a certain piece of land to be his people, and whoever lived in that land became his people. This is why it is okay in most of your writings when your Hebrew people conquer a people, they kill all the Amorite men, the Ananite men, and the Amorite men, and the Moabite men. They kill all the men. They kill all the baby boys. They kill all the women who have not known a man in some cases. And in other cases, they take all the women and the women who have not known a man and make them their wives. And then they become part of the Hebrew people because they are in the Hebrew land and they are already Semitic. And so therefore they become part of the promise and part of the people. In the same way, Ruth, who was a Moabite woman, became a part of the Hebrew people, who gives you then Obadiah, Jesse, and then David. And then, as you guys believe, on up to your line of Jesus. So Jesus would have Moabite blood based on that line through Joseph. Oh, shit. Joseph didn't have nothing to do with that baby being born. Jesus is not from the line of David. Only in thought as a stepdaddy. But anyway, the point being is that it is most likely the thought of the people being Semitic has nothing to do with Gentiles. And then it is just abhorrent that y'all would take the symbol of death, the cross, a Roman symbol of death, even though the cross was used by previous civilization, but is most known as a Roman symbol of death, to utilize as your symbol of your deity. Y'all be better off walking around with a fish on your chest symbolizing Jesus instead of a cross. But y'all have a great day. And remember always, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.